Hello, and welcome back to the 7th episode of In Case You Missed It. Thanks for letting me take a week off, but we do have a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about a recent ruling from Alabama and its implications on reproductive health, the recent death of Putin-critic Alexei Navalny, and the Supreme Court refusing to hear a high school admissions case out of Northern Virginia. My name is Tyler Bagent. Let's get right into it. On February 16th, the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos, including those held for the purposes of IVF treatments, are considered children under state law, a move critics say could significantly harm the practice of IVF in Alabama and have major implications for fertility treatments nationwide. The case was brought to the Alabama Supreme Court after a lower court ruled against 3 couples whose embryos were destroyed by a patient who entered the place where the embryos were held and then dropped them. They sought to sue the Center for Reproductive Medicine and the Mobile Infirmary Association or Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, which the court previously ruled applies to fetuses killed while a mother is pregnant. The Alabama Supreme Court then took the case and ruled in favor of the 3 couples. Associate Justice J. Mitchell, in the majority ruling published by the court, said, quote, "This court has long held that unborn children are children for the purposes of Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, Section 6-5-391, Alabama Code 1975, a statute that allows parents of a deceased child to recover punitive damages for their child's death," adding, quote, "The Wrongful Death of a Minor Act applies to all unborn children regardless of their location. The location Justice Mitchell is referring to is in or out of a mother's womb." Barbara Cholera, CEO of Resolve, the National Infertility Association, told the Associated Press, quote, "This ruling stating that a fertilized egg, which is a clump of cells, is now a person. It really puts into question the practice of IVF. For those who aren't familiar, in vitro fertilization, more commonly known as IVF, is the process in which mature eggs are collected from ovaries and fertilized by sperm in a lab. These fertilized eggs, called embryos, are then implanted in the uterus with the hope of achieving pregnancy. It is commonly used for couples with fertility issues who hope to have a biological child." Following the ruling, several IVF providers in Alabama halted services due to uncertainty around the court's ruling. Frozen embryos held in IVF centers, now viewed as children by Alabama law, usually can remain in storage for around 10 years. Therefore, the ruling makes it unclear if frozen embryos must be implanted after collection, also raising questions if couples could donate or destroy unused embryos. Dr. Paula Amato, president of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, warned in a statement that this decision could severely limit people's access to modern reproductive medical care, saying, quote, "By insisting that these very different biological entities are legally equivalent, the best state-of-the-art fertility care will be made unavailable to the people of Alabama. No healthcare provider will be willing to provide treatments if those treatments may lead to civil or criminal charges." Both the White House and Alabama state lawmakers have scrambled to put together a strategy to address the ruling, particularly to defend IVF, though it's unclear what the response will look like on either end. On February 16th, Russian authorities announced the death of Putin opposition leader Alexei Navalny in prison, where he was serving an over 30-year-long prison sentence. Navalny, for years, has been held in the corrective labor prison for various criminal cases, though a number of human rights groups have accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of holding him as a political prisoner. Navalny's widow, Yulia Navalny, has claimed that Putin assassinated her husband. Navalny had long been critical of Putin and Russia's ruling party, even coining the term, quote, "party of crooks and thieves." Navalny, primarily throughout the 2010s, published materials containing accusations of widespread corruption throughout the Russian government. Navalny had been attacked a number of times throughout his period of advocacy, including by various substances that permanently harmed his eyesight and a poisoning in 2020. During the latter, he fell into a coma and was put on a ventilator before being flown to Germany and discharged around a month later. Navalny's mother, Lyudmila Navalny, has reported being blackmailed by Russian officials over her son's body. She claims that Russian officials refused to show her son's body to her and abused his corpse unless she agreed to a secret burial. Quote, "They want it to be done secretly, without a goodbye. They want to bring me to the edge of the cemetery, to a fresh grave, and say, 'Here lies your son.' I don't agree to that," she said. She was taken to her son's body on Wednesday evening. Yulia Navalny, in a video after her husband's death, said, quote, "By killing Alexei, Putin killed half of me, half of my heart and half of my soul, but I still have the other half left, and it tells me I have no right to give up," adding, quote, "Fight and don't give up. I am not afraid, and you should not be afraid either." Last week, President Biden sat down with Navalny and her daughter in San Francisco before later announcing more than 500 new sanctions on Russia and Russian officials on Friday morning. According to the White House, quote, "These sanctions will target individuals' connections to Navalny's imprisonment, as well as Russia's financial sector, defense industrial base, procurement networks, and sanctions evaders across multiple continents. They will ensure Putin pays an even steeper price for his aggression and abroad and repression at home." The United States Supreme Court declined to hear a case out of Alexandria, Virginia, that would have sought to strike down a race-neutral admission system, refusing to revisit the issue of race in education and allowing the admission system to stand. Following protests stemming from the murder of George Floyd in 2020, Thomas Jefferson High School elected to move to a race-neutral admission system. This resulted from concerns from the community over a low number of African American and Hispanic students attending the school. The admission system, instead of considering race in standardized test scores, instead asked applicants about financial status, whether they're learning English, attending a, quote, historically underrepresented middle school, among other criteria. As said before, race, sex, gender, or test scores were not considered. Coalition for TJ, a group of Thomas Jefferson High School community members, parents, alumni, and others, sued the district, accusing the admission system of trying to, quote, racially balance the freshman class by excluding Asian Americans. They appealed to the Supreme Court from the Fourth Circuit, ruled in favor of the admission system. In his dissent, conservative Justice Samuel Alito wrote, quote, what the Fourth Circuit majority held, in essence, is that intentional racial discrimination is constitutional so long as it's not too severe, adding, quote, this reasoning is indefensible and it cries out for correction. Furthermore, he said, quote, even though the new policy bore more heavily on Asian American applicants because it diminished their chances of admission while improving the chances of every other racial group, the panel majority held that there was no disparate impact because they were still overrepresented in the TJ student body, also adding, quote, that is a clearly mistaken understanding of what it means for a law or policy to have a disparate effect on the members of a particular racial or ethnic group. In a statement on the social media platform X, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin wrote, quote, I am disappointed that the Supreme Court declined to review Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology's admissions policy that penalizes high-performing students in the name of equity. This nation was built on the idea of building a better future through hard work and determination, and we should recommit to those ideals. Admission should be based on merit. We should embrace excellence and reward high-achieving students. This decision comes after the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action programs at Harvard University and the University of North Carolina in June, declaring the race-conscious admission system to be unconstitutional. In that decision, Chief Justice John Roberts wrote, quote, the Harvard and UNC admissions programs cannot be reconciled with the guarantees of the Equal Protection Clause. Both programs lack sufficiently focused and measurable objectives, warranting the use of race, unavoidably employs race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. The Supreme Court's denial to hear the case signals an unwillingness to return to the issue of race in admissions, with this being the second case relating to the topic rejected this year. The court previously rejected a case out of the United States Military Academy in early February. Well, that is all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for tuning in to In Case You Missed It. I will see you next week for not only the last episode before spring break, but also the last episode before the Virginia presidential primary. We will talk more in detail about the presidential race then. I have been your host, Tyler Bagent, and I will see you all next week. Bye!